Welcome to this episode of It's Not You, but Sometimes It Is. I had the funnest conversation with Miss Erin Stadler in Boulder, Colorado. Erin transitioned from software developer to a brilliant COO who's had to develop an incredible amount of wisdom around the psychology of people and why they resist change, and the psychology of really terrible leadership and how people get there and how to help pull them out of it. Erin had some really authentic, deep insights to share in this. We had a lot of fun. She's got a great sense of humor and a lot of wisdom from the world of tech and innovation. I know you'll enjoy the conversation. Please enjoy. Welcome, friends, to It's Not You, but Sometimes It Is, where I get to have super fun conversations with badass leaders in C-suite roles about the crazy stuff that we face, the problems, and when we've sometimes realized that we were the problem. And I'm super excited for my conversation today with Erin Stadler. Erin, thank you so much for being here.
I'm very excited to be here.
And Erin and I have already had some really fun chats, so this will be a good time. Erin is currently the COO at Boomtown Innovation in the Boulder area of Colorado, doing really interesting. I'll let you describe what they do, but Erin, your career trajectory has always been in kind of being a catalyst for organizational change and improvement in different companies. And then you decided, wait a second, I could do this. I should just step into a C-suite role and try all these skills I have and be in a senior leadership role in a company and do it all myself. So a lot of people don't have that kind of chutzpah. Ooh, that's like an old school word. Maybe we should edit that out. So I'm really excited to hear kind of what your thought process was. So give us a little bit about a minute about your career trajectory, the type of work that you did, and then what led you to doing what you do at Boomtown.
Awesome. I'm happy to answer that question. So I actually started as a software developer. Um, uh, Early on, I knew I loved technology and I loved getting in there and I loved kind of, reinventing things. And so I found myself as a software developer at a company. But it turned out I only made it as a software developer for about 3 months or so. Mostly because I realized I had a knack for collaborating with all the other engineers and actually across the entire organization and helping all the products get delivered kind of on time and in a nice way. And so as a part of that, I got a really early education in putting in processes and approaches and all this other stuff. And I got a really fast education, probably because I was young at the time, is that putting in all these system and processes were only as good as what the people actually wanted to do. And really what that meant was that they saw the process as something that actually helped them. It actually helped them get something done versus you were supposed to have one. Um, so I really enjoyed that because when people loved the work, they loved the environment, all of a sudden, right, you were reaching all the company goals, people were really excited to be at work. So that actually launched me into moving through startups, through large organizations, through a couple companies that got acquired, and being drawn to roles where I was really orchestrating change and moving, kind of learning what was the best way to create change in those organizations. How do you help people just do work better? And I spent a little time being a consultant and working through companies and doing that as well. And, as you know, working with organizations, it's like a gigantic ship, that you're trying to move all the time. Lots of challenges with leaders and learning how to do that. And we can talk about that experience as well. But along the way, I stumbled in to Boomtown in the first few months that they had been founded, and I realized, wow, here's an opportunity to work with a company that's focused on innovation, that's focused on helping organizations be adaptive, and actually we focus on bringing innovation in from the outside and it being adopted into the organization. And I'm like, sweet, I not only get to help organizations actually adopt new technology, which is a big, challenge and transformation. But also the question I had for myself was, is it possible to put in some of these the value of adaptation and innovation and change in an organization, so you yourself are an innovation engine for others.
Okay.
And so that's what I've actually been doing for the last 10 years is running, we'll say, that experiment of is it possible and what does it look like and what emerges when you are building a culture that's built on innovation and change and is actually helping organizations develop innovation and change as well. A little
Very.
meta there, but that's what it is.
I was gonna say that's very meta and
Yeah.
super exciting. And I can see how that's a great role for you and exciting for you. But you know, change tends to be this total trigger point for so many people. It can bring out the best in us, it can bring out the worst in us because humans really resist change, right? Until they see that it's really going to benefit them in some way. And even then, a lot of people resist the change and they do it in super dysfunctional ways. So I know you probably have some fun stories for us. So let's also talk about that intersection of like, well, first, can you think of a specific time in a company at any point in your career where there was an obvious positive change initiative that you were trying to drive forward and there was some weird, unexpected difficulty or barrier? Like what happened? What came up that got in your way? And how did you overcome it?
So I've had to manage change, interestingly, inside my team as well as also how do I change my internal team in order to get change results with our organizations we're working with.
Hmm.
Um, we actually started as an accelerator program, if you're familiar with startup accelerators, years ago, and it was going into organizations and helping them source innovation. But we realized really early on that the organizations or that only lasted so long. And if you're familiar with any sort of innovations efforts out there, they last about 3 years.
Hmm.
And then they get shut down, generally because um, the innovation's not getting adopted, which is again all about the change piece.
Hmm.
So the team on our team side, it was really easy and it was really comfortable of like, I'm just going to go find a really cool innovation and then I'm going to introduce it right to the corporation. And I'm like, guys, we can't just stop there. We actually need to go in and understand what's going on in the organization. And it also means that we have to collaborate across, right,
Hmm.
multiple parts of our organization to not just say, here's a technology or here's a thing you should take to the client, but also what does it look like for us to really adopt it? And that was something none of the team had really done before. It was something that was really scary because they've been getting value out of just bringing a solution instead of really helping create change in the organization. We had a situation, or I guess I had a situation where the two leaders that were ahead of these groups um, started really starting to they started to butt heads. And actually, that unexpected difficulty, and I remember listening to some of your other podcasts, came about because of COVID. And actually, our team became completely remote.
Hmm.
And so, any trying to do any sort of change initiative. So I had a change initiative at a company. I joined as a project manager or a senior project manager at a large organization. And when I joined the organization, they were doing traditional waterfall. That probably there's a lot of people out there that will be probably still experiencing that. I apologize to them for that. But waterfall product management, which means that the company was delivering on a quarterly basis. I happen to be there right at the forefront of agile development, and which for me is someone that loves change and kind of new frameworks. I really dug into, and I was like, wow, this new thing where you're doing iterative development and you're putting stuff out there immediately and you're collaborating. You have QA coming with product management and development. Like to me, I was like, that sounds like a lot more fun. We're like working together and we're getting stuff out there more quickly and more responsive. And I was like, why wouldn't you want to do this? So I volunteered and raised my hand, went out there, got trained for it, and was like, I'm going to come back into this organization and help them transform using Agile. So I got people in a room, they tapped me to do it, sat down with all of the developers, and I have never been met with more grumpy faces in my life. And because it was a large organization, it was a lot of developers. I'll say, we say lifers, they've been there a long time. It was very comfortable, right? They knew exactly what they needed to deliver when, they knew when their crunch periods would be, right? They were on this calendar.
Hmm.
And so having me show up and be like, you're going to work differently and it's going to be great. As someone who was very young, by the way, this was when I was in my 20s. I mean, I it was a real fast education in you have to understand what is scaring people about the change.
Okay.
So while I did an initial training and I presented what could, here's what it could look like, um, it was clear this was not going to happen. It was a lot of, a little bit of a pat on the head, like this sounds fun, but I'm going to go back to work again. Luckily for me, I have maybe too much perseverance, and I really did believe in the opportunity in making the business a little bit better.
Hmm.
So I actually ended up sitting down with people that were key influencers in that kind of development organization. That was something I think that often gets missed, right? And when I say key influencers, it wasn't the managers, actually. It was people that I learned that had been there, had a high degree of respect, and people really listened to.
Hmm.
And I was like, and if I can work with them, if I can collaborate and partner with them on the change, and also they're going to know the best way to approach the change. So through partnership with that other person, when I started, I was able to sit down one-on-one with him. He could challenge me and kind of be like, well, Erin, you know, they're really not going to like this. And we were able to kind of talk through, well, what do we need to get? What do we need to talk to management about? What kind of promises or what sort of things can we put in place so that people weren't, afraid, if I don't deliver or if I do something differently or if there's a mistake. And I
Yeah.
think that's a lot of the miss sometimes is when you're making a change, people know what they've been rewarded for.
Hmm.
This is going to invite a mistake or that they might do something wrong. And how is leadership or their management going to respond to that?
Yep.
So that is a lot of what we worked on in order to do that change successfully. And
Yeah.
we were able to do it. It was a bumpy road,
Hmm.
but it was a really huge reminder. And like, you can't just show up and train people on a new framework or initiative. You actually have to work through the people side, be okay with the fears and the risks that they have, and really help them adopt this new way of working.
And Erin, you took it to a next level in your insight and what you learned from that situation because you didn't just go, okay, how do I overcome the resistance? You understood the very core of the nature of their resistance, right? Because you were socially aware enough to go, oh, they're actually afraid to make a mistake and they're afraid to look bad. And that, like, you have to kind of boil stuff down to that basic human dynamic of what is the true core of this resistance? And then how do I create enough security that you won't be judged? People aren't going to think you're stupid or bad, right? Because
Yeah.
that's essentially where the fears are coming from. And we have to create security around the fears before people can move forward.
When I used to tell people, I mean, I believe every single person shows up to work wanting and doing
Hmm.
what they think is best in
Yep.
their role.
Hmm.
And so their their pushback is not because they're trying to be malicious or trying to undermine you. It really
Yep.
is because, hey, I know what it takes for me to do a good job,
Hmm.
and you're challenging that right
Yeah,
now.
exactly.
So, I think you have to appreciate that. And there's too many organizations or too many managers and leaders I've seen that just get frustrated that people can't see it.
Yes.
And sometimes, unfortunately, right, it goes to kind of that toxic behavior of applying meaning to their behavior
Hmm.
that's not they're showing up and doing what they really believe
Oh,
is
these
the best.
people are just lazy or they just don't want to
They
X or
don't get it.
Y. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's actually a perfect bridge to another thing I wanted to ask you about, because you've had so much experience with this. So sometimes, at least in my leadership journey, I've figured out how I want to be by watching how other people are and going, I don't want to do that, right? Like
Okay.
we kind of figure out good leadership by watching the behaviors of other leaders that we realize don't work. That's a bad boss thing that they're doing right now. So what are some examples of some of those leadership traits or behaviors that you've seen that are just dysfunctional or not optimal, especially in the context of creating positive change? And what those bad boss behaviors. And do you think that bad bosses are fixable?
I love this question. Um, so the one that has come up for me a lot for some reason, and I don't know why I've come up against this one, but it's the best way to put it is you have to figure out how I would do it
Huh.
reasoning. And I learned that one really early in my career, because I was working again with a group of developers. They had come to me and said, "Hey, we have a way that we want to approach this engineering challenge." And the CEO I was working with was an engineer by trade,
Hmm.
which you probably know sometimes in
Hmm.
leadership like that can be a huge strength, right? You want the person in the C-suite to have that technical acumen in order to, deliver the great product, but it also means they have an opinion about how they want it done.
Hmm.
And I remember this so clearly. I approached them and I was like, "Hey, the team wants to approach, this engineering challenge, which was actually a hardware product at the time. They think it'll be cheaper, it'll be faster, and we'll get to market." And in his mind, he had done that kind of engineering breakdown, and he was like, "Nope, they need to approach it this way." And I was like, so I asked him, "Hey, you know, could you believe that if their approach and they did it their way and your approach, that it actually could get to the same outcome? Like we'll reach the same point. It's just they want to take a path versus your path." And he just looks at me and he's like, "Nope, they need to figure out how I would do it." And then I remember in my young, I don't know, snarkiness, I guess, I asked, "Well, well, why? Why do they have to figure it out your way?" And he, I think probably out of frustration, he was like, "Well, because I'm the CEO." And I remember thinking in that moment, wow, okay, so I can't be successful here. And I remember it being so clear to me, I can't be successful at this company because it is literally impossible to look at someone and go, "I know exactly how they would do something."
Oh,
And interestingly, it's not the first time I run into it. And to me, that's not a yellow flag, it's a red flag.
yeah.
And I think it's one of the biggest limiters between managers becoming leaders.
Hmm.
And to kind of answer your question on the fixing side, I don't know. I chose to leave that organization. So I don't know if that was fixed. To me, I was like, okay, if they want to lead that way, that's their prerogative and they're allowed to lead their organization that way. But it's not a good place for me because I will feel inhibited on how I want to solve problems.
Yeah.
I think because of that, listen, I've been burned by trying to fix leaders.
Hmm.
And at least in my roles that I've had. And instead, I think where I sit right now is instead of it being a problem to fix, it's a fit issue.
Okay.
I recently was listening to a podcast actually with Brene Brown and Ginny or Virginia, I forget her last name, but she was an HR consultant and she was talking about, everyone really wants to be leaders, but really, it's not popular to be a great manager right now. And I never really had thought that. And I've noticed it's like everyone should be a leader. And she's like, "No, there's a totally different skill set and a
Mhm.
fit. Some people are great managers and they should stay there and you want to find them. And there are people that are great leaders and you want to find them and put them there."
Mhm. Yeah,
And so
absolutely
I
agree.
wonder sometimes, if the leaders we want to fix are managers that should have been great managers and should
Hmm.
not have moved into leadership.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's some personality traits that are going to make you better at management than at leadership, that are just kind of wired personality traits, like we've talked
Yeah.
about, right? Where I like things to be structured and systemic and not change very much. That's a great trait for a manager, right?
Yeah.
To create consistency and order. And you and I aren't wired like that, right? We don't like order and consistency and predictability. We want change and innovation and transformation. And so we're not really wired for frontline management. And that's okay, right? But when you stick us in an environment where we're supposed to just try and keep everything the same, that's going to drain our energy. It's not going to be great for us. So I like
Yeah.
that. I like that fit perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. So That's a very like nice PC answer. I wanna poke more into this.
Go for it.
So, um, the old saying, sometimes when you've had all this like catastrophe and drama and problems at work, and you look back and you realize, oh, I was the real problem there. I'm the consistent factor in all of this crap around me, right? And I have to say, I have had this awareness happen multiple times in my leadership journey and career where I realize maybe it's not everyone else, right? Maybe it's me. I need to take a look at what's going on in here. And can you talk about one of these like key learning moments for you where you realized, oh, I'm actually in a battle with an old mindset or a personality intensity that I have, and I need to shift. I need to adapt something. I need to manage this in order to be able to lead in this type of an environment or situation. So, what was that mistake that you were making or thing that you had to become aware of? And what did you carry forward from that experience?
So, I mean, I definitely know that I can be intense, but the more interesting thing I've learned about myself, and I'd say even it's only been recently since I've been able to put a positive spin on it, is if you've taken, right, we were already nerding out on personality assessments. And I think I mentioned, on my Gallup, I have high adaptability. I recently did the Enneagram where I was labeled as a peacekeeper. And that one actually landed on me kind of negatively because one of the things I do struggle with, especially in environments where I'll say I really respect the other individuals, or I'm being met with a lot of um, uh, resistance to change, is that I'm more likely to try to keep the peace, or I don't want to rock the boat, or, it's a bit of we need to get a thing done, so now's not the time to work on it. And so I I had a recent situation, or I guess it was a couple years ago, where I had two leaders that were on my team. They were remote, so they weren't seeing each other very often. I think I mentioned, because of COVID, we became more of a remote team instead of being with each other. And I noticed that there was tension with them on phone calls. We were trying to get work. And I had people telling me, hey, Erin, like there's something going on with them, or, the team's feeling a little, or, one person's team is feeling like they're not being respected by the other person's team. And the mistake I made at the time was one, I highly respect those two individuals. They have a lot of experience. Like they'll figure it out. Kind
Mm,
of respecting, they'll figure it out. Yeah. But I think when I really reflected on it later, it was a bit of, man, I just like, I don't want to deal with the conflict right now. Like we have so much going on. We have so much to do. I'm just going to compartmentalize it. Like they're big kids. They'll figure it out.
yep.
Unfortunately, it didn't happen. It got to the point of almost being pretty toxic.
Hmm.
And I had to deal with it anyway.
Yeah.
But by the time I came in and I sat down with them and said, hey, you need to reconnect and we need to figure out and we need to align on outcomes and when I can find the common ground again, right? It took a lot longer to heal that rift than it would have if I just said, hey guys, we need to get in a room, or hey, let's come together, let's all fly to Boulder and like see each other for a little bit. It's amazing how much even just doing that can change.
Hmm.
And the thing I really learned from that, and more recently when I reflected on a little bit, was that yes, I have a drive to want there to be peace or stability in a room, but really it's a draw to be a mediator. That's been my reframing recently to that is instead of it being, oh, keep the peace by avoiding, it's that
Hmm.
I can actually lean into that. My uncomfortableness is just my signal of there's something to work on here. And so how do I actually lean in and work on it and
Hmm.
actually make it that there really is, right, stability and strength in the team versus like avoidance of it. So that's probably been the place where I've done the most work is knowing me being uncomfortable with the tension. It means that there's something that I actually have the skill to help with and not, right, avoid it.
Oh, there's so much to what you just said, Aaron. First of all, like those little red flags that we ignore as leaders because we're focused on the goal, we're busy. We know they're busy, and we're like, it's probably going to be okay. I'm sure that's not as bad as I think it could be, right? And then we do that over and over and over. We justify not taking action. And I have found that the biggest mistakes that I've made in leadership roles is not what I did, but what I didn't do.
Yeah.
And I was judged harshly, not for what I did, but for what I didn't do, for the things I didn't address, the things I was ignoring, the things I was brushing away or justifying for other people or enabling bad behavior. And I love how you said that now you've reframed it that any kind of a discomfort is actually a trigger to act, not to avoid. It's a yes, I'm uncomfortable with this, and it's because something needs to be optimized, improved. I need to be an agent for change here. And we're all going to be a little resistant at first to stepping into something unknown and uncomfortable. But now, when you're a true leader and you get that signal of discomfort, a true leader feels that discomfort and goes, I need to take action. That is like, to me, the biggest differentiator from a frontline manager to someone who's a senior leader driving change is we smell the fire and we go toward it.
I love your reframing on that. And actually, even for me, I'm like having this moment of like, we've had some other recent challenges too, kind of in our leadership team where I was telling another senior leader, hey, we need to take action on this. I'm noticing it. You need to take action. And essentially it was a something I'll say I was calling out for another person because it was really more of their role to take action on.
Mhm.
And probably for about 5 years. And recently they approached me and said, I should have listened. I compartmentalized it. I pushed it off to the
Mhm.
side. I decided it wasn't important. And now it's probably one of the biggest factors in some of the challenges that we're having.
Yeah.
And, but at the same time, it made me reflect on, well, should I have taken more action? If I was the one seeing it, was I also, making the excuse of, oh, it's for someone else to take action on?
Yeah.
What's the part I could have played in that? And I love you say it, it makes me wonder, I hope, if there was an action for people listening to this, it's, what are the things we get so focused on the actions we're taking and the work we have to do.
Mhm.
It's, it's curious to me how much are we not acting on and we're creating actions over here so we don't have to take actions over here,
Yep.
you know?
Exactly. And most companies don't live or die by the what of the work, what's happening, the goals, the actual business. Most companies are broken by the how it's getting done, the relationships, the flow, the experiences of people, and all the prickly friction and crap that comes up within there. And yet we all get together and just keep talking about the what we're getting done, how quickly we're doing it, is it equality? And that is not usually what breaks a team or a company.
No, no.
So, so much wisdom here. Okay. And that's actually a really good bridge to my last question. I feel like I want to keep talking for 2 hours, but people do not have attention spans for that these days. So, Erin, my last question for you, I'm very interested to hear if I could give you a time machine and send you back to talk to yourself 10 or 15 years ago. What is the most important advice you would give yourself?
The most important advice I'd give myself is to trust my instinct. Um, it has taken me 20 years to appreciate that I just think differently than a lot of other people.
Mhm.
Um, I thrive in different types of environments from others. Um, I'm a much more holistic thinker and, love to see the system as we've talked about. And I, really appreciate being able to help people change. And that does not um, resonate with a lot of people out there that are in the norm. And I think I've had a lot of people try to kind of put me in the box or will say, like, give me the advice to stay the track, or like I said, not rock the boat. And I think it took me a while to build some confidence in, no, you actually think differently, and that's a huge strength. And so, put yourself in the places where that's appreciated and find the people that go, oh, we need that. instead of trying to just fit a mold that's out there.
Oh, I love it. I love it. If only I could go back and tell that to younger me too. It's very wise. Erin, thank you so much today for sharing these. These are like really deep insights that we've been able to kind of pick through. And thanks for your generosity in sharing all this and for a really fun conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.